Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast, Healing Through the Pain, tribute to PTSD Awareness Month. I want to give a little history about PTSD, but understand that a lot of us, when it comes to tributes, we have to kind of lament how bad we remember things. And PTSD was one of those things that I didn't know much about, like where its history was, but I want to share with those as we start off this month of being aware of PTSD. In 1980, PTSD diagnosis has filled an important gap in psychiatry that its cause was the result of event that individuals suffered rather than a personal weakness. It's amazing just how view of trauma was just about 40 years ago. Today, I have returning a guest, Michelle Portier. Michelle Speaks, joining us today to share her insight. I just want to say thank you, Michelle, and for returning and sharing this important topic of healing through the pain and PTSD and trauma. Thank you for returning again.
I want to thank you so much for having me, Robert. As always, I'm very much an advocate for, sounding the alarm and raising the awareness and being a voice for those that aren't in a place where they can voice, where they are on their journey to recovery. So as always, I'm honored to share this space with you.
I just want to share with those who are listening, there's a disclaimer. If you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help. There is in the U.S., it's 1-800-273-8255, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I know that there's listeners outside of the United States, and I want to ensure you to reach out to the resources you do have. It's about continuing the conversation. It's, resources, unfortunately, are not always there for every individual, but we're hoping that the conversation continues. It's about the people, about the faces and the families connected more than everything else. So as always, Michelle, I always start with a quote. And this is not really a quote. It's an excerpt of an author I used to love reading in high school, actually. It's Ernest Hemingway. And he says, the conversation goes, who is that on the trenches by your side? Does it matter? And the person responds, more than the war itself. Farewell to arms, Ernest Hemingway. What comes to mind? I know you're a Navy veteran. I'm an Air Force veteran. Comically, I used to make fun of Army people and say that they barely know how to use crayons. I know people would hate me. My brother's an Army veteran, so I could kind of make fun of them a little bit. But anything you want to share when it comes to this this quote? It's kind of interesting, but a lot of people say there's urgency of war, but I find that the camaraderie I felt in my military career, it's hard to match. The people around. So, anything you want to share when it comes to?
The most important thing that I want to share is it most definitely matters who's with you when you're in the trenches and who's by your side. Because, as we both have that military background, the one thing that we miss most often and we're deeply impacted by it is when we transition back into our civilian, world in the community, that reintegration process is challenging because we're so used to having that camaraderie, that sense of unity, that support, that sense of linking arms, especially if one of us is hurting, all of us is hurting, and that's in the word as well. You rejoice with those who rejoice, you mourn with those who mourn. And so losing a sense of that when you're in the midst of a crisis or when you're in the midst of a battle, it most definitely it matters who's there by the side in the trenches with you, encouraging you, to pull through, to not give up, to take one more step, to, try one more time, to, take that breath. So it most definitely is important because we're not meant to journey through this life alone, especially in the most challenging times.
I think it really parallels when we think about our own recovery, because there's a lot of things that we are out of our control. Arguably, if you're a soldier in the military, you have very little control what war you're going to be in or where you're going to go. And I feel in recovery, sometimes life is the same way. The certain changes happen. 2020 was a big change for a lot of us and not so good. And for it's adapting to that change. I feel what Ernest Hemingway, besides, paying tribute to the military, and a lot of times, unfortunately, the PTSD is affected. A lot of military members are affected by PTSD through the military. But on the other side, it's just the whole idea of the two concepts of things in life that you can make small changes to get better in your recovery, and some things that you can't. And like arguably Ernest Hemingway just says it right here. You know, you can't change what war you're going to be in or what circumstance you're going to be held to, but it's the people around you that matters. And I always say, we are not islands. We're not islands. But I do like this as we go into, because a lot of people, when you think of healing through the pain, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I feel one of the biggest steps in my recovery has been through the pain, the realization of a lot of factors. Like I lamented earlier, the mental health month was last month when this uploads, but remembering is a thing that we usually have a hard time doing. We don't like doing it, but I feel at times it can be helpful. I want to ask you a question real quick, but let's just go right to it. How through healing through the pain, how does this resonate with you? I know it's different because, like I said, recovery is different for everyone. Mm-hmm. How does healing through the pain resonate with you, Michelle?
Well, healing through the pain very much resonates with me because, that is my mission. That is my vision. That is what I do in life. I help others recover from the devastating, effects or impact of the pain that they've encountered, the trauma or whatever it is they've encountered, and they have not addressed it or suppressed it because they weren't aware of it. So it resonates with me because, it's a part of my own journey. And this is the thing that I tell people: healing is a journey. It is not a destination. It's not a place that you arrive at. Mm. And society, the way that society is, it has compelled people to seek and run towards pleasure, but to avoid pain at all costs. And by doing that, we're really damaging ourselves and our ability to connect and show up with others, because we try to escape pain by doing so many things. We become shopaholics, workaholics. We binge watch TV. We become emotional eaters. We use alcohol or, go into a virtual reality in our mind. If we don't like the reality, we create our own reality. Some people use pornography, or, just become, very promiscuous. Some use email or Facebook or social media as a way to escape dealing and addressing the pain. But the first thing we have to do is to acknowledge it, because, God has given us a full spectrum of emotions, and pain is a part of that. And the sooner that we submit and just yield to facing the pain, the much easier the journey will be to recovery. But knowing that, actually doing it it's hard. And, this month, this time of the year, it's really a season of me having to heal through the pain and the grief and the loss of a very dear loved one of mine, my cousin. She prayed into the kingdom, and she, transitioned home to be with the Lord around this time, 7-8 years ago. And every year around this time, I have to face and confront that pain, because if I don't, then it causes me to spiral and go into this deep depression, and it's hard to come out. But because I've identified the source of it, and I've acknowledged it, and I've accepted it, because every time I accept it, I'm confronting it and I'm dealing with it. It's helped me to better be able to sit with the emotion rather than trying to suppress, when I feel the urge to cry, or when I'm feeling sad, or not trying to understand, well, why am I feeling like this? Now that I've identified what it is, it better helps me to allow myself to sit with it rather than trying to run from it by being busy or by work or whatever, everything that I can do to avoid it.
It's fun, I really like what you're saying, in the sense that I'm reading a book and it talks about enoughness. This idea that, and a lot of times we attach our value onto something else, and there's certainties that don't have any certainty. But I do like that you address emotions. A lot of people don't. There's two sides. There's always a polarizing thing about emotions. But when I think about emotions, they're a good notification of something that may need to be addressed. They're not good. They're good servants per se, not good masters. We should not be making our choices pure on emotions. I know sometimes sometimes good habits are building boundaries or space, because sometimes the first initial response we have is not the one we should take. So when it comes to emotions, but at the same time, it's recognizing it. If you feel angry, it's okay to feel angry. Go through that. If you feel sad, a lot of times, I think it's hard for. I'm not a parent myself, but I imagine my mom when I was going through all this, going to hospitals, like it's hard to see me cry or be sad. So a lot of times, new parents now, they ask me, because supposedly I made it, in their destination mindset. But I'm saying no, it's a journey. But a lot of times they want shortcuts. But sometimes the biggest growth comes in the smallest ways. It could just be and a lot of that is due to some mindset and kind of perception, because like when you could have the external kind of say, oh, you should eat broccoli, you should go to walk, or all this stuff, but if the person doesn't care about themselves or the value themselves, they're not going to do it. It won't stick. It may do it for a month and then they won't do it, and then they'll be like, I feel horrible, and talk about how horrible they feel about not doing it, but they're not addressing why that is, and then they put all their, like you said, they put all this urgency, or like I would say enoughness, on something else, like binge watching this or this. Everything is all these destinations, but never allowing themselves to breathe. We're such a busy culture, but I'm trying to use different words than busy when people talk to me, because honestly, when I say I'm really busy, sometimes it's just I don't have the time to explain everything that's going on right now. Let's just be honest. That's how it feels. But I feel knowing those boundaries and being okay to feel feelings is part of the process of healing through the pain.
Sometimes those boundaries can be blurred or crossed because we're often led to believe that, our boundaries, because of what we've experienced, our boundaries have been crossed. And sometimes before we even realize the fact that we have or can have boundaries.
Yeah.
So, the line can become blurred.
It can. And I feel it's a tricky thing, because it's one thing that it's determinant of your background, your culture, your family, all that factors in. But I was talking to someone from Palestine the other day on the recording for this podcast, and one thing that crosses all culture boundaries fairly well is suffering, loss, all these things. But value is so different for everyone. But like we could understand on the rudimentary level of losing someone precious to us. We can understand pain and all this stuff, but we really are bad at value, because I feel like sometimes we put an urgency and we put our value not in ourselves or our faith or purpose, but on other things, and those things keep changing. And I just want to segue to this question: how has pain regarding trauma changed for you? Because through the years, I look back 4 years ago, it's much different than how I look at it now. So how has that transitioned for you, Michelle?
So, pain regarding trauma has changed for me throughout the years, because there was, for a long period in my life, I was very reactive to things. I was reactive because of the pain that I was experiencing, not understanding what it was or why it was. But I was very reactive because I had not dealt with the turmoil within as a result of the trauma that I had experienced throughout the years. And so how it's changed is I'm no longer as reactive. I'm not going to say I'm not reactive at all, because that is a side of us. But it's changed because now I've taken ownership of really allowing myself to address. I always question myself when I get angry, or when I'm feeling hurt, or if I'm especially sensitive, or I get offended easily when somebody says something that doesn't sit well with me. Now I automatically go to, why am I offended? Why am I angry? Why do I feel so hurt by what this person has spoken to me? Is it them, or am I going back to something that I experienced earlier in my life? And this was familiar. This was similar to that. So it took me back to that space. So now I evaluate a lot more, and I'm not as reactive. Again, everything in this life is a journey. Life is a journey. Recovering is a journey. Healing is a journey. Growing is a journey. So pain and how I deal with the trauma, every betrayal, is a trauma, and most people kind of overlook the fact that being betrayed, it causes a response. And if you don't deal with that response, because our body holds trauma and our body is reactive. And so I go in within, because everything external begins within. It begins within. So if I'm reacted to something, if I'm in a situation and my heart starts accelerating, or I feel nervous, or I get a nervous ball of pit in the pit of my stomach, I'm like, why are my radars up? What in this space or in this environment is causing me to be either afraid or causing me to go into defensive mode? So now I'm not reacting. Like, if I felt that before, if I was reactive, I'm out of there. Or I would go and position myself where my back was to the wall so I could, kind of look at my surroundings and I could see everything that's going on. My radar was on like 110. Now I've kind of focused on, honing in on and relaxing and allowing and grounding myself. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but let me examine. Has anybody said anything? Has anybody done anything? Has anybody touched me to make me feel like this? Why am I feeling like this? So I've gone from being reactive to being reflective, and then logical about how I deal with the pain of the trauma.
Yeah, I think there's there's seasons of recovery. There's times, and for me, I've been in different ways, because I went to school. I just remember going through Calc 2 unnecessarily. I had to go through that, but part of trigonometry is the derivative thing, and I do that with my own emotions a lot of times. It's not usually about this, it's about that. I always say that. Like, if I'm really I'm reactive, I'm really like, it's not usually about what I'm saying it is. And if someone's coming to me and telling me, oh, this makes me so upset, this makes me so upset, and I'm talking to them, it's usually the same thing. It's not about this, it's about that. It's something else. Unfortunately, the big pill I had to swallow was the people that I couldn't stand had a lot of common similarities to myself that I didn't want to face myself. And that's the rub. That's when you really start to realize that this barrier that you're putting, this kind of blaming, the blame game, is only preventing you to move forward and realize that, hey, I make mistakes. This hurts me because it's showing me a part of me that I don't really like. What can I do? And you kind of look at the two sides. Is it something I could change? But there's no quick fix. And when you have the journey mentality, it allows you room to have those bad days and be okay, but not make them worse by learning and growing on your coping skills. And one of those coping skills I've been trying to do, tapping. It's kind of funny. I've been doing this tapping kind of thing because I did EMDR therapy. I did for my trauma, and I do breathing, progressive relaxation. But tapping is something that kind of full circles. I did acupuncture when my mom tried it. She got me when I was first onset, trying to get me to feel better, and it did help. But I like with EFT, and it's not a plug, it's something I actually am doing right now, but it has been helpful because it allows me to feel the emotion. A lot of times we bury it, and I find myself, I might be sad, but I don't allow myself to be sad. I might be angry, but I don't allow myself. I wear a lot of hats, and I'm a lot of times, jokingly, and people know this as my peers, I might be needing comfort or to talk to someone, and a lot of times when I start talking, I'm comforting them. So I'm like I'm not even, it's never about me, but at the same time that allowed me the patience and learn some other ways of coping. And tapping is one of those things that I can do alone, and it kind of addresses the feeling. And it's a wonderful thing about safe places and having those boundaries is whatever you say doesn't mean that's the final say. I might be extremely mad, but I might realize that I was that wrong too. You know what I mean? And it's a self-realization, and that's kind of one aspect of what I felt has been helpful healing through the pain, because some of those moments are very painful. When the self-actualization, self-awareness is not easy. When you get closer to that, is not easy, and that is part of.
I'm not going to say that it's not easy. Mm-hmm. It's just that we know what we need to do, but actually doing it sometimes is the greatest challenge because we don't want to experience the emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten so used to putting up this barrier, this wall, that it's actually become, or this mask for, like, because I deal a lot with masks, that we've had these masks in place for so long that they become a part of our identity. And so something has become a part of our identity. That's how we relate. That's how we connect with showing up. And if that is challenged, then breaking down that barrier is a feat in and of itself. And so the more that we realize that and we're able to acknowledge and address that, I believe the easier the process of recovery can become. But we mirror those that we're closest to. We mirror. They are a mirror of the things that we are having challenges with. And so we allow ourselves to become transparent and vulnerable to the ones that, in whatever season we're in, that God has brought, in order for us to face the pains, to be able to grow. Then that not only helps us, but it helps the other person as well, because there's a reason that you've been allowed to be connected in this particular time and space. And so for me, tapping, I tried it. I wasn't able to connect with it. I tried the EMDR. Wasn't able to connect with that. I tried so many things, the cognitive behavior therapy, the prolonged exposure therapy. Each and every trauma, but that was detrimental because I had compounded trauma, so it actually caused me to spiral. So a combination of things I found helped me to deal with trauma. And so one of the things is I have to be connected to nature, because to me, nature has a healing quality that no amount of meds and no amount of therapy can mimic, because the meds just mask the symptoms. They don't deal with the root. And the therapy, I do love talk therapy. It just depends on, I have to have a rapport, and there has to be a connection between me and whoever I'm communicating with, because if I don't trust you, I'm not going to open up to you,
Exactly.
And I have an acronym for trust. It's time, respect, understanding, sensitivity, and tenacity. All of that to me encompasses trust. And if you think about it, a lot of times we have PTSD and battle with it because our trust has been broken.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it becomes challenging to trust anything or anyone because it's been so ingrained. And so if you trust someone, then you're gonna open up to them. You're gonna be vulnerable. You're gonna be authentic. You're gonna be transparent.
I think I have been very fortunate. When I first came down to Florida, I still have the same therapist. That's the one who's kind of been working with me with, and because I trust him, I remember just clicking in my head while you were talking. That's why tapping, I was more open to it. I remember my brother, he told me he went to EMDR. He had the same response. He's like, it didn't work for me, but it worked for me. And that's why trauma looks different for everyone. And that's what I'm saying. It's no one's better or worse. That's why, it's important to kind of look what's out there and see what's right for you. And I think with the idea of choice, like, honestly, when it comes to self-awareness, the actual act of it, I don't believe is hard, but I do believe the choice is. Neil Strauss says it this way: people go through so much pain trying to avoid pain. And we just we kind of make, like you say, these masks for us, and it's so hard for us to take them off after a while, because and that's where it gets more painful. Not the fact that I kind of feel like when I go to the derivative of how I feel, it's some basic emotion. I feel alone. I feel sad. I don't feel safe. A lot of those kind of words are sometimes at the bottom of what all is going on. I don't trust. I feel betrayed. I feel, that's all those kind of basic emotions. But at the same time, I think they can bring about some really big steps, at least in my experience, to kind of understanding why it's not about this, it's about that. Why am I angry at the situation? It's because I don't feel safe. Because this reminded me of something, or maybe it's a time of year. I have time of years that's really hard for me. So like those time of years, I don't even know it's happening, but it's just kind of that time of year it triggers me if I'm not careful, if I'm not aware of what's around me. So that is important. This quote, I want to lead into this quote, but we kind of mentioned what this quote but anything you want to add to this or comment? I think this is kind of self-explanatory because I do like what J.K. Rowling says. Those Harry Potter fans will be like, but J.K. Rowling says it even better in a way. Numbing the pain for a while will make it worse when you finally feel it. I remember I used to say desensitize the sensitivities when I was in the military because I was 19 years old, basically running away from pain from home, and I came out with more pain. And because I was trying to numb it all. So, any thoughts of these two quotes?
You said a key word, Robert, when you said you didn't feel safe, and so people will avoid pain at any cost if they feel that they're in an environment where they don't feel safe to be able to express that pain. And because again, you become so accustomed to numbing the pain, or creating different things to avoid the pain, such as what I mentioned earlier, shopping, working out, eating, emotional eating, using drugs and alcohol, using sex as a way to avoid really feeling, using fantasies or pornography or whatever it is, I'm very transparent. I've used all of that at some point in my life to try to avoid the pain.
Yeah.
But when it got to the point that I couldn't anymore, and then it just came in like a flood, it was so overwhelming. I wanted to come out of my skin. And that is what it feels like when you're so used to numbing, and then all of a sudden, all of these emotions and all of these feelings come. You don't know what to do because you spent so much of your life avoiding it. And so, the road to being able to allow yourself to express happiness, sadness, fear, anger, loneliness, joy. It's so foreign that when you feel it, you're like, okay, when is the other shoe going to drop? I'm experiencing this, but I'm only going to experience it for a second. Then I'm going to go right back to feeling that pain because it's what has become programmed. And so I want to experience all of the spectrum of emotions that God has given me. I want to be present and fully in the moment with all of the relationships that are important to me in my life, even if it's with somebody that's feeling pain, because the one word that people associate with me is they feel safe. It's a safe environment. It's a safe place. They feel at peace. But in order for me to come to that place to be able to do that, I had to find peace in the midst of my own chaos. And so that's why I say on this journey called life, healing and recovery is not a destination. It is a journey. We experience things to help other people through when they are at that point, just to hold space for them, just like you do for so many people, Robert, just like I do. But even in all that, we have to have the balance within ourselves to allow ourselves to process the things that come up in opportune times.
There's an old church lady. She told me, I still remember, she said, people are either blessings or lessons. And I feel that's very true. And that goes with a lot of things in life. You could look at it one way that, this situation was so horrible. This person was so detrimental to my well-being. But happiness is kind of funny. Happy in itself doesn't, you can't buy into. If you know that you're around people, but they're not bought into you, if they're acting fake, you're not going to feel like you're around anyone. You're going to feel lonely. You're not going to feel safe to share anything. So I feel like blessings and lessons in life, whether it's people, whether it's experiences, going through it as a journey has been very helpful. There's so much we could say about all this, but remembering and having these conversations are very important. Michelle, coping skills we talked about, you mentioned a few. Anything else you would like to share with those listening that has helped you? I mentioned some of mine. Anything else as we wrap up? Any last thoughts too?
Well, some of the other things that have helped as far as coping is, there's a saying that says, to thine own self be true. you have to know the things that work for you and the things that don't work for you. Just because quote unquote experts are giving you coping tools, if they don't resonate with you, then don't use them. For me, I love music. Music and movement is soothing to my soul. It is soothing to my very being. The word says, in him I live and breathe and have my being. I live and have my being. I connect with music. I'm able to express what I'm feeling with my body by connecting to the lyrics of the words that I listen to. And I'm mindful about what I listen to, because music can either uplift you or it can bring you down. So be mindful of the type of things that you're allowing into your environment, that you're allowing into your spirit, that you're allowing into your soul. And then I know some of the other things that relax me or help me is taking a hot lavender bubble bath and putting some candles in and just listening to some soothing music. And then, being out in nature, that is the thing. As far as things that help as far as therapy, talk therapy helps for me. You have to know there's this thing called the love language. What is your love language? Do you know? For me, it's quality time. It's words of affirmation, and it's touch. But in what order?
Yeah.
Touch for me is the most important, and then quality time, because in this fast-paced world, the society that we live in, we do so much multitasking that we're never fully present in the moment with the people that we say are important in our lives. And so to alleviate some of the pain that we've had from the traumas that we've experienced, we need to be able to truly connect with others. And so to be able to truly connect, you have to eliminate the distractions. And so to be fully present. So those are some of the tools that I use. Like when I'm with someone, I will put my phone on mute, or I will ask them, can you be present with me if I see that they're trying to multitask? Because that, to me, that shows me that I'm not as important as you say I am in your life. Whereas now, before I wouldn't have voiced that, now I will voice it, because time is the most precious commodity that we have. And once you lose it, you can't get it back. And so I don't like feeling rushed when I'm in the presence of someone. And if I feel that, then I will shut down and I will distance myself. And so I will leave you with this: you to thine own self be true. Know what works for you and implement the things that work for you.
And I just want to say, besides thank you for coming on and showing your insight, I do like the idea of being present. I think it's a lost art. I think it has been lost through this urgency. When I could be and talk to someone and feel like I'm the only one in that room, that doesn't matter who's there. Another thing is the open road mentality. I was thinking about this a lot. Like, I went with my wife to like the caves in west of Tallahassee, and after that, she's like, where are we gonna go? I'm like, I don't know. Just get in the car. When was that ever a thing? We put the GPS to destinate where we're gonna go. I just drove, and it felt so freeing just to drive, and actually follow signs. I lamented and kind of laughed. I'm like, why are there even signs? Because everything gets told to us through a GPS if we put it on there. But at the same time, it kind of laments the idea of being present. I want to say, it is important for us to communicate and communicate well. And part of that is actually being present and listening to each other. And I feel, for one, and a lot of times I don't think it's intentional, but it is the biggest sign of respect you can give anyone, even if you disagree with them, is to listen. Yeah. You learn a lot from people I've learned a lot from people that maybe I didn't agree with at the first time. But I feel it's not about being right. It's about the connections we make and kind of building on that, continuing the conversations. And that's the only way we will remember about these things, the PTSD thing, mental health, awareness. These are things we remember because we don't attach a bunch of facts. We attach faces. We attach each other, and that's why it matters. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on. I just want to share with those who are listening, the Revive Ministries, you can see all the updates on reviveministriesfl.com. It's our website. This is goodbye for Revive Ministries Podcast. Leaving with this last quote, and it says, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Mary and Rat Match.